For centuries, it was an unfathomable mystery, a relic of impossible complexity. But what if I told you that a 2,000-year-old machine, pulled from the depths of the ocean, was capable of astronomical calculations that rival modern technology? We're finally unlocking the secrets of the Antikythera mechanism, revealing an ancient civilization far more sophisticated than history gives them credit for. What if the timeline of human achievement is not a straight and steady ascent from primitive beginnings to modern brilliance, but a far more mysterious and unsettling epic of soaring peaks, catastrophic losses, and long, painful periods of amnesia? We are told a comfortable story that humanity crawled from the caves, learned to shape stone, then bronze, then iron, building knowledge piece by piece in an unbroken chain of progress. It is a tale that places us firmly at the pinnacle of history, the inheritors of all that came before. But what if an object were to surface from the deep, something so bafflingly advanced, so utterly out of place in its own time, that it shatters this comforting narrative to pieces? This is the story of such an object, a discovery that forces us to confront the disquieting possibility that our ancestors possessed a level of genius we have arrogantly denied them. It is the story of a ghost, a phantom from a drowned world, pulled by chance from its watery grave after 2,000 years of slumber. It arrived in the modern world not as a celebrated treasure, but as a corroded, calcified lump of bronze no bigger than a shoebox. And yet locked within its layers of decay was a secret so profound it would take more than a century to decode. A secret that suggests a rupture in the very fabric of history. This object, now known as the Antikythera mechanism, is not merely an ancient artifact, it is a message. It is the tangible mechanical echo of a lost chapter of the human story, a testament to a forgotten age of scientific brilliance that rose, flourished, and then was utterly extinguished from the memory of man. To understand it is to question everything we believe about the ancient world, and in turn, about ourselves. It forces us to ask, what did the Greeks of 2 millennia ago truly know? And more terrifyingly, what have we, in our modern conceit, forgotten? Our journey begins not in a laboratory or a museum, but in the violent, churning heart of the Aegean Sea, where a furious storm became the unlikely midwife to a revolution in history. The year is 19007. The Aegean Sea, a cradle of civilization, is in a timeless rage. For a crew of Greek sponge divers from the small, hardy island of Simi, it is a fury that threatens to swallow them whole. Their captain, a man named Demetrios Kontos, was guiding his vessel home when a gale of legendary violence descended upon them, turning the sky black and whipping the sea into a churning cauldron of foam and spray. There was no outrunning it. Their only hope for survival was to seek shelter in the lee of the nearest landmass, the tiny, barren, and aptly named island of Antikythera, a desolate rock sitting halfway between Crete and the Peloponnese. For days they waited, prisoners of the storm, anchored in an unfamiliar cove as the wind howled around them. The life of a sponge diver is one of immense hardship and mortal risk, and idle hands are anathema to such men. To pass the time, one of the divers, Elias Stadiatos, decided to explore the depths below. He suited up in the heavy canvas and ponderous copper helmet of the era, a claustrophobic cage
that was his only shield against the crushing pressure of the abyss, and dropped over the side into the deep, murky water. Down he sank, through shafts of muted, green-blue light, into a world of deepening shadow. At 150 feet below the turbulent surface, the seabed materialized before him. But what he saw there was not the familiar terrain of sand and rock. It was a scene from a nightmare. He saw a field of pale, twisted limbs, of frozen, silent figures scattered across the seafloor in grotesque poses of eternal rest. Convinced he had stumbled upon a horrifying carpet of rotting human corpses, a mass grave of drowned sailors, a wave of terror seized him. He signaled frantically on his line, a desperate plea to be pulled from the charnel house below.
He broke the surface, gasping, his eyes wide with horror, babbling to his captain about the graveyard he had discovered. Kontos, a seasoned man of the sea, was skeptical. He suspected nitrogen narcosis, the infamous rapture of the deep, a dangerous hallucination known to afflict divers at such depths. To see the truth for himself, the captain donned the heavy gear and made the perilous descent into the silent world that had so terrified his crewmen. He would not allow his ship to be haunted by phantoms. When Dimitrios Kontos returned to the world of air and light, he carried the truth in his hand. It was not the decaying flesh of a human arm, but the cold, hard bronze arm of a life-sized statue. Stadiatos had not been hallucinating. He had discovered a graveyard, yes, but not of men. It was a graveyard of art. He had found an ancient Roman cargo ship, sunk in the 1st century BC, its magnificent treasures scattered like bones across the seabed. The Greek authorities were notified, and what followed was the world's first major underwater archaeological excavation. For 2 grueling years, the sponge divers of Simi worked in conditions of unimaginable danger, battling the elements and the ever-present threat of the bends, which would kill one of them and leave 2 others permanently paralyzed. They brought up a treasure trove that stunned the world. Magnificent bronze and marble statues, including the serene and thoughtful figure now known as the philosopher of Antikythera. They recovered intricate glassware, lustrous pottery, gold jewelry, and coins, a shipload of luxury goods almost certainly bound for the villa of a wealthy Roman patron. And then, in the spring of 1901, amidst all this splendor, they found something else. Tucked among the crates, they pulled up a strange calcified lump of bronze and wood, fused with rock and shell. It was shapeless, ugly, and gave no hint of the value that lay beside it. It looked like nothing more than a messy chunk of wreckage, a piece of the ship's ruined structure, perhaps. No one gave it much thought. It was logged with the other finds and sent to the National Archaeological Museum in Athens, where it sat in storage, ignored and forgotten for months, overshadowed by the breathtaking beauty of the art with which it was found. No one could have possibly known that this ugly, corroded stone was more valuable than all the statues and all the gold combined. They could not have known that within this humble tomb of rock and time lay a machine of such breathtaking complexity, such impossible genius, that its existence would one day force us to rewrite our entire understanding of the ancient world. They did not know it then, but they had recovered the single most sophisticated technological artifact ever found from antiquity. They had found the ghost in the machine. For 2 years, the lumpy artifact sat in storage at the National Archaeological Museum in Athens, a confusing rock shelved and forgotten. It lacked the immediate, breathtaking beauty of the bronze and marble figures it had shared a watery tomb with. The statues spoke a language of art and myth that scholars understood, their serene faces and powerful forms connecting directly to the glorious, accepted narrative of the classical world. But this object was silent. It was silent. It was an ugly, indecipherable footnote to a spectacular discovery, a piece of detritus that offered no story, no beauty, no clue as to its purpose. And so it waited, gathering dust in the quiet halls of the museum. Then, in May of 1902, the object did something unexpected. As the last of its ancient moisture evaporated after 2 millennia of saturation, the immense internal stresses of corrosion and drying caused it to crack apart. The stone-like shell that had formed around it split open, revealing a glimpse of the mystery that had been locked inside for 20 centuries. An archaeologist named Valerio Stais was sorting through the debris from the wreck when he noticed the fractured lump. He peered inside the fissure, and what he saw was simply impossible. It was not stone, not wood, not the amorphous decay of corroded metal. It was structure. It was design. It was the unmistakable, intelligently shaped form of a gear wheel, its sharp, triangular teeth perfectly defined. And there was not just one, but a whole system of them, a complex and intricate network of interlocking wheels layered with a breathtaking precision that his mind could barely accept. In that moment, Valerio Stais was looking at something that should not exist. He was gazing across a chasm of 2,000 years at the ghost of a lost technology. This was not part of a statue, not a piece of decoration. This was a machine of a complexity and sophistication that, according to the rigid doctrines of history, had no place in the ancient world. Stais was stunned, but his intuition was immediate and clear. He published his theory that the object was some kind of astronomical clock, a complex calculator built by the ancient Greeks. The crack in the corroded bronze was more than a physical rupture. It was a crack in time itself, a deep fissure opening up in the smooth, polished surface of accepted history, revealing a glimpse of a world far more advanced and mysterious than anyone had ever imagined. The academic establishment reacted to Stace's theory not with excitement, but with immediate and resounding dismissal. The idea was simply too radical, too disruptive to the carefully constructed timeline of technological progress. It was treated as historical heresy. Gears this complex, with their fine-toothed, precision-engineered forms, belonged to the great cathedral clocks of 14th century Europe. That was the official story. To suggest they existed 1,400 years earlier, in the time of the Caesars, was to tear a page out of the history books. It flew in the face of everything scholars thought they knew about the capabilities of the ancient world. The consensus was swift and brutal. Stace had to be wrong. Critics, unable to accommodate such a paradigm-shifting object, scrambled for alternative explanations. It must be an anachronism, they claimed. A modern instrument, perhaps a navigational device from a later ship, that had fallen by chance onto the ancient wreck and become fused with its artifacts. The idea that it was truly from the 1st century BC was deemed utterly impossible. The very concept of precision gearing, the foundation of all subsequent mechanical engineering, was believed to be absent from the Greek and Roman mindset. And so, the Antikythera mechanism became an intellectual orphan, a machine without a history, a pariah of archaeology. It was a deeply uncomfortable piece of evidence. To accept it as ancient was to admit that a vast and vital chapter of our own story had been lost, that our ancestors had scaled a technological peak only to fall into a chasm of forgetting that lasted for more than a millennium. It was easier for the guardians of the official narrative to dismiss the object than to confront the unsettling questions its existence demanded. For decades, it remained a frustrating puzzle, its potential ignored by the mainstream. The 82 separate fragments into which it had crumbled held not only gears, but also plates covered in faint, almost invisible inscriptions, letters less than a millimeter high. But the artifact was disintegrating. To study it risked destroying it.
It was a silent witness, a crumbling testament to a forgotten genius, offering no easy answers. The puzzle was this: either the entire history of technology was wrong, or this object didn't belong. For 50 years, the academic world chose to believe the latter. It would take a new generation, armed with new ways of seeing, to finally begin listening to the whispers coming from within the stone.
The mid-20th century marked a turning point. The mechanism, for so long a shunned and silent enigma, fell under the intense gaze of Derek J. de Solla Price, a brilliant physicist and historian of science from Yale University. Price was a man who possessed the rare ability to see beyond the rigid boundaries of academic disciplines. Where others saw a corroded lump of bronze, he saw the ghost of a revolutionary idea. He became obsessed, recognizing that if this device was truly ancient, it would, in his own words, change all our ideas about ancient Greek technology. For the next 2 decades, Price spearheaded a painstaking investigation, a quest to force the object to give up its secrets. The challenge was immense: how to see inside the fragile, crumbling fragments without destroying them forever. The answer lay in harnessing one of the most powerful and mysterious forces of the modern age, the atom. In the 1970s, Price enlisted the Greek Atomic Energy Commission to bombard the fragments not with chisels or brushes, but with invisible beams of X-rays and gamma rays. He was using the language of nuclear physics to hold a conversation with the ancient past. The images that slowly emerged from the radiographic plates were astonishing, like ghostly photographs of a lost world. They confirmed a complex system of over 30 interlocking gears. But it was in the details that the true revelation lay. Price meticulously, painstakingly counted the teeth on the spectral images of the wheels, gears with 19, 38, 53, 127, and 223 teeth. To anyone else, these numbers would have been meaningless. To Price, an expert in the history of astronomy, they were electric. They were magic numbers. 19 years is the length of the Metonic cycle, the precise period required to reconcile the calendars of the sun and the moon, a cornerstone of ancient timekeeping. 223 lunar months is the length of the Saros cycle, the period after which the sun, earth, and moon return to the same relative alignment, a cycle that serves as the master key for predicting eclipses. This was the smoking gun. The gears were not random. They were a mechanical codex of Greek astronomical theory. The machine was a calculator. But Price's investigation uncovered something even more shocking. A piece of engineering so far ahead of its time, it was almost terrifying. He identified a differential gear train, an ingenious assembly that can take 2 different inputs and create an output that is their sum or difference. According to the established history of technology, this crucial invention did not appear until the 16th century. Yet here it was, humming silently in the heart of a 2,000-year-old machine. It was this discovery that led Price to his famous, stunning conclusion: that finding the Antikythera mechanism in a Roman shipwreck was out of place, as anachronistic, as finding a jet airplane in the tomb of King Tut. Price had opened the door, but the view was still hazy. The X-ray images of the 1970s were fuzzy, 2-dimensional shadows of a complex 3-dimensional machine. The next chapter of the investigation required a new kind of vision. It began in the 1990s with Michael Wright, a curator at the London Science Museum and a man with the soul of both a scholar and a master craftsman. Frustrated with the limitations of existing technology, Wright built a new type of scanner himself, a linear tomographer, designed to create far clearer 3D images of the intricate gear trains. With this new tool, he peered deeper into the machine's metallic heart than ever before. He identified more gears, refining the count and mapping their connections.
But his true genius breakthrough came when he focused on the mechanism that drove the moon's display. He discovered an ingenious pin and slot device nested subtly within the other gears. The ancient Greeks knew the moon's speed is not constant. It appears to accelerate as it gets closer to the Earth and slow down as it moves away. This simple-looking device, a pin on one gear moving within a slot on another, was a moment of pure mechanical poetry. It perfectly translated the uniform circular motion of the driving gears into the complex, variable speed of the moon's elliptical orbit.
It was a breathtakingly brilliant solution, a mechanical model of the subtle, celestial dance of our nearest cosmic neighbor. Still, the biggest mysteries remained. How did the machine model the 5 known planets? And what secrets were locked away in the thousands of tiny letters inscribed all over its surfaces, now rendered unreadable by time and corrosion? The final great phase of the investigation began in 2005 with the formation of the Antikythera Mechanism Research Project, or AMRP. This international team of scientists, mathematicians, and classicists brought the full weight of 21st century technology to bear on the puzzle. They commissioned a custom-built 8-ton X-ray machine, nicknamed the Blade Runner, so powerful and precise it could reveal every single gear tooth, every tiny flaw, every hidden feature within the fragments. The ghost that Price and Wright had glimpsed in the shadows was about to be brought into the light. The results were a revelation. The high-resolution 3D models created by the AMRP allowed researchers to virtually disassemble the mechanism on a computer screen, to see how every single part connected and functioned. But perhaps the most profound breakthrough came from a different technology. Using a technique called reflectance imaging, which lights a surface from multiple angles to reveal the faintest of impressions, the team began to read the unreadable. The thousands of characters of text, almost entirely invisible to the naked eye, began to emerge from the corroded bronze. For the first time in 2 millennia, the machine began to speak. And its voice was clear, precise, and astonishing. They discovered over 3,400 characters of Koine Greek, a vast inscription that was nothing less than a user's manual engraved on the device itself. It described the cosmos as the machine displayed it, confirming its function as an eclipse predictor and calendar. Yet even with this technology, many inscriptions remained too damaged, too fragmented to decipher. This is where a new kind of intelligence entered the story. Researchers at DeepMind, a leading artificial intelligence lab, developed a neural network named Ithaca. They trained it on thousands of intact ancient Greek inscriptions, teaching it the patterns, the grammar, the cadence of the language, until it could predict missing letters and words in a damaged text with uncanny accuracy. When Ithaca was turned loose on the fragmentary inscriptions of the mechanism, it began to fill in the gaps that had stumped human scholars for decades. The collaboration between human expertise and artificial intelligence was a monumental success. The machine's voice grew stronger, revealing its deepest secrets. It spoke of planetary cycles so vast and complex they were thought to be far beyond the grasp of ancient astronomers. One decoded line read, "After 462 years, Venus completes 720 synodic periods." Another stated, "Saturn returns in 442 years after completing 427 revolutions." These were not poetic observations. They were engineering specifications. They were the mathematical blueprints, the orbital timings that the ancient masters had built into the very bones of their machine. After a century of silence, the voice of its creators was finally being heard, and it was the voice of pure genius.
With the blueprints resurrected from the corroded bronze and the machine's voice finally heard, the full, staggering vision of its creators can at last be revealed. What they built was not merely a calculator or a calendar, it was a clockwork cosmos. It was a portable universe, a miniature heaven wrought in metal, designed to fit within a wooden case the size of a large book. To turn its single crank was to hold the power of time in your hand, to watch the majestic, silent dance of the celestial spheres play out before your very eyes. Imagine standing before it in the flickering lamplight of a Greek workshop 2,000 years ago. The front of the device is a stunning and complex display, a large circular dial that is a map of the known universe. At its center, unseen, lies the Earth, the vantage point from which all this cosmic motion is observed. From this center, at least 7 slender pointers extend, each one tracking a heavenly body. One for the sun, sweeping its steady path through the constellations of the zodiac, which are exquisitely engraved around the dial's rim. Another for the moon, and then 5 more for the 5 wandering stars known to antiquity: Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn. This is no simple clock face. As you turn the handle, these pointers do not move with uniform grace. They speed up, they slow down, and at times they even appear to move backward, perfectly mimicking the strange looping retrograde motions of the planets as seen from Earth. This complex ballet is driven by the ingenious epicyclic gearing hidden deep within, a mechanical translation of a cosmos that was, to its creators, profoundly alive. But it is in the details that the true genius becomes almost overwhelming. The pointer for the moon is not a simple needle. Embedded within its tip is a tiny, rotating ball painted half white and half black. As the moon pointer sweeps around the dial, this little sphere rotates in perfect synchrony, flawlessly displaying the changing phases of the moon, from the thinnest sliver of a crescent to a brilliant full white and back again into darkness. It is a feature of such elegance and ingenuity it takes the breath away. And there is more. A separate, serpent-like hand, what researchers have called the dragon hand, crawls slowly around the dial, marking the invisible points in space where the moon's orbit crosses the path of the sun. These are the celestial gateways, the only places where the cosmic alignments necessary for an eclipse can occur. When the sun and moon pointers line up with this dragon hand, the machine is issuing a warning. An eclipse season is near. The universe is holding its breath. If the front of the mechanism was a perfect mirror of the heavens in the present moment, the back was something else entirely. It was an engine of prophecy. It was a forecasting machine designed not just to show where things were, but to predict when things would happen, far into the future. Turning the device over reveals not one central dial, but 2 large and beautiful spiral displays that dominate the panel. The upper spiral is the master timekeeper, the great 19-year clock that reconciles the cycles of the sun and moon. With 235 divisions marked along its graceful 5-turn spiral, it tracks the metonic cycle, the precise period it takes for the lunar months to come back into perfect alignment with the solar year. This was the master key to all ancient calendars, the solution to a timeless problem, and here it is, rendered in bronze, ticking through the years and decades with unerring accuracy. The lower spiral is perhaps the most astonishing feature of all. It is the eclipse predictor. Laid out over a 4-turn spiral with 223 divisions, it maps the Saros cycle. And it does not just offer vague warnings. The inscriptions engraved within each division are chillingly specific. They indicate the month, the day, and even the hour that a solar or lunar eclipse is possible. They contain symbols, glyphs that describe the character of the eclipse, whether the sky will go fully dark or just dim. It is a window into the future, a tool that gave its user the almost godlike power to know when the sun would be devoured or the moon would turn to blood. A subsidiary dial nested within it even accounted for a longer 54-year cycle, helping to fine-tune the predictions for specific locations. And yet, amidst all this cosmic grandeur, this high science, the ancient masters included a feature that is so profoundly, so touchingly human. Within the upper metonic spiral lies a smaller dial, a simple 4-year counter. Its purpose? To track the cycle of the great Pan-Hellenic Games. It showed which year of the Olympiad it was, and when the other great games, the Isthmian, Nemean, and Pythian, were to be held. The inclusion of this dial is a stunning revelation. It proves this was not some hermetic tool for a reclusive astronomer. It was a device deeply embedded in the fabric of Greek culture, a machine that connected the grand, inexorable cycles of the heavens to the earthbound rhythms of human celebration, competition, and ritual. It was a bridge between the world of the gods and the world of men. So, what does it all mean? What is the ultimate message of this clockwork cosmos resurrected from its tomb of water and time? The answer is as simple as it is world-shattering. It means our timeline of technological progress is wrong. For centuries, the history of mechanics was written with a gaping 1,400-year hole in its heart. The sophisticated gearwork, the differential mechanism, the very idea of turning abstract mathematical theory into a tangible working machine was all thought to begin with the great astronomical clocks of 14th century Europe. The Antikythera mechanism proves this narrative is unequivocally false. The knowledge was not invented in the Middle Ages. It was painfully and slowly reinvented. A tradition of complex mechanical engineering not only existed in the ancient Greek world, it reached a stunningly high peak, a summit of genius, and then it was lost. The skills, the thinking, the precision, it all vanished from the historical record so completely it is as if it never existed. This is the question that haunts the entire story, the silence that echoes louder than any revelation. Why is this the only one? If the ancient Greeks could build one such device, surely there must have been others. Was this technology a closely guarded secret, a tool reserved for an elite priesthood or a school of philosophers, never meant for wider dissemination? Or was its tradition catastrophically destroyed? We must remember the violent and chaotic world in which it was born. The Roman conquest of Greece was a period of immense upheaval. Cities like Corinth, a possible origin for the device, were torched. Perhaps the workshops were smashed, the craftsmen killed, the lineage of knowledge broken forever. Or perhaps the reason is more mundane, and therefore more tragic. Bronze was a valuable commodity in the ancient world, often melted down and recycled for swords, shields, or statues. It is possible that these mechanical marvels were simply melted away, their genius sacrificed for the raw materials of war and art, leaving this single lucky survivor, preserved by the sea, as the only witness to their existence. Whatever the reason, the mechanism stands as a quiet and deeply uncomfortable warning. It is proof that history does not always move forward. Sometimes it forgets. Sometimes it leaves its greatest achievements behind, buried in the dark. If the tradition was lost, then who were the masters who began it? Who were the phantom geniuses, the forgotten fathers of a technology that would not be seen again for over 1,000 years? The inscriptions and astronomical data point to a creation date as early as 205 BC. The astronomy itself is often linked to the greatest of all Greek astronomers, Hipparchus, who did his most important work on the island of Rhodes. Indeed, the Roman writer Cicero, writing in the 1st century BC, speaks of a mechanical sphere built by his friend Posidonius of Rhodes that showed the motions of the sun, moon, and planets. Was he describing a device like this one? Rhodes, in that era, was the Silicon Valley of the ancient world, a global center for astronomy, engineering, and Stoic philosophy. It is the leading theory, but certainty remains just beyond our grasp. The existence of such a creator, whether it be Hipparchus, Posidonius, or some unknown genius, forces a radical reevaluation of the past. It suggests that progress is not a straight line ascending ever upward. It is, perhaps, a cycle. A series of brilliant peaks of achievement followed by devastating collapses and long, slow climbs back to the light. The Antikythera mechanism is the single greatest piece of evidence we have for such a lost peak, a golden age of mechanical science we never knew existed.
This is the not good implication, the unsettling feeling that commentators like Graham Hancock and Joe Rogan have discussed. The discomfort comes not from the idea of alien intervention. Indeed, the mechanism is profoundly human, based on a geocentric, Earth-centered cosmos, and even tracking the uniquely human obsession of the Olympic Games. The disquieting truth is far more intimate. It is the realization that our ancient ancestors, 2,000 years ago, were not our primitive forerunners, but our intellectual peers. They were people capable of a level of abstract thought and mechanical execution that we arrogantly assumed was unique to the modern world. And if their sophisticated world, their accumulated knowledge, could be so utterly and completely erased from memory, what does that say about the fragility of our own? For a long time, the mechanism stood alone, a stunning but singular anomaly. But what if it is not an anomaly at all? What if it is, instead, the Rosetta Stone for a whole class of baffling ancient artifacts, the keystone that proves a much wider pattern of lost knowledge? When we look through this new lens, other mysteries in history begin to echo its strange song. Consider the so-called Baghdad Battery. Discovered in Mesopotamia and dated to around 250 BC, it is a simple clay jar containing a copper cylinder and an iron rod. When filled with an acidic liquid like vinegar, it can produce a small but measurable electric current. Archaeologists debate its function. Was it for electroplating, for ritual magic, or did it merely hold scrolls? But its existence hints at a knowledge of galvanic principles, a flicker of electrical science that should not exist for another 2,000 years. Or look to the deserts of Peru, to the giant Nazca lines. These are enormous geoglyphs, a hummingbird, a monkey, a spiral, scratched into the desert floor between 500 BC and 500 AD. Some are miles long, executed with a precision and confidence that is staggering. Their full forms are visible only from high in the air. How were they designed and executed with such accuracy without an aerial perspective? They are not machines, but like the mechanism, they scream of a level of planning, mathematics, and sophisticated understanding that seems out of place, a puzzle screaming for answers. Then there are the Roman dodecahedra. These are small, hollow, 12-sided bronze objects dated from 200 to 400 AD that keep appearing in archaeological digs across Europe. They are all standardized in design, yet no one has any idea what they were for. Surveying tools, candle holders, toys? Like the mechanism, they are precisely crafted, oddly specific objects whose purpose is a complete enigma. Taken alone, any one of these might be dismissed as a curious fluke. But viewed together with the undeniable genius of the Antikythera mechanism as the centerpiece, they begin to look like scattered clues, the fragmented data points of a forgotten global chapter in the human story. They are echoes of other lost sciences, other forgotten arts, whispering to us that the world of our ancestors was infinitely richer,
stranger, and more brilliant than we have ever been led to believe. The Antikythera mechanism is a miracle, not of alien intervention, but of a lost strain of human ingenuity. It is a shoebox-sized cosmos that has shattered our comfortable timeline of history, a stark and humbling reminder that the story of our past is not a simple straight line. It is proof that 2,200 years ago, at least one brilliant mind, or team of minds, had not only conceived of the universe as a great clockwork, but had actually built the clock. For over a century, we have pieced together its story, from a violent discovery in the deep, to decades of neglect, to a painstaking investigation with the most advanced technology of our own age. What has emerged from the depths is a device more sophisticated, more elegant, and more profound than we ever dared to imagine. But the story isn't over. The scientific analysis and digital reconstructions have given us the blueprint, the ghost of the machine. Now comes the final test, the ultimate proof. Researchers and craftsmen today are taking on the monumental challenge of rebuilding the mechanism, not with modern 3D printers and laser cutters, but using only the tools and techniques that would have been available to the ancient Greeks. They must cut every one of the dozens of gears by hand, carving and fitting each shaft and pin without the aid of modern precision. It is a quest to answer the last nagging question. Could it really have been made back then? If they succeed, it will prove beyond all doubt that the original designers were not just brilliant theorists, but master craftsmen of the highest order. It would show that the ancient world didn't just imagine the stars, they built them into a machine you could hold in your hands. But if they fail, if it cannot be made without modern help, it might mean we have still missed something vital about their world, that they possessed skills and methods we haven't even begun to rediscover. The Antikythera mechanism is not just a piece of history, it is a question from the past, a challenge posed to our present. And so we are left staring into the abyss of our own forgotten history. The real mystery of the Antikythera mechanism is not who built it, or even how. The real mystery is what it represents. It is a stark reminder that history is a story of brilliant peaks and devastating losses, of knowledge gained and knowledge catastrophically forgotten. It is a testament to the profound fragility of civilization itself. It makes you wonder, if this one device, this single, impossible machine, survived purely by the chance of a storm and a shipwreck, what else was out there? What other marvels of ancient engineering lie dissolved on the ocean floor or buried deep beneath the earth? What other entire chapters of our own story, our own lost history, are still waiting, silently, to be found? The greatest mystery of all is not what is locked inside this machine, but what is locked inside of us, a collective amnesia, a forgotten legacy, waiting for the next chance discovery to awaken it from its long slumber.